You're watching part 2 of Infinity's series on building cabinetry. If you missed part 1, be sure to check it out where we show you how to build the cabinet boxes for your project. In this part, we're going to be building the face frames for our cabinet boxes as well as the drawers and sliding trays. With our cabinet box fully assembled, it's time to lay out all the pieces for our face frame. We need to make both our stiles and our rails for our face frame. And to do that, we need to do a little bit of measuring and layout. We have our pieces cut to width, but we need to know how long to make each piece. We need our vertical stiles to go from the top of the cabinet box and actually overhang the bottom of the cabinet box about 3/4 of an inch, because we want our bottom rail to be flush with the inside of the box, and of course, being 1.5 inches wide, it will overhang the bottom and create a little bit of a shadow line at the bottom of the box. So what we can do is take an offcut of one of our face frame pieces, put it on the cabinet so it's flush with the shelf or the bottom of the cabinet box, and then measure the overall length of our stile. Once we have our stile length figured out, we can also measure how wide or long our rails need to be. The rails need to extend from the cabinet box from one side to the other, but we need to allow clearance for our drawer slides and also our sliding trays so that we can have clearance for those things to work properly. This is very simple. We'll position a piece of plywood, 3/4 inch plywood that we're going to use as our spacer. We'll put it inside the box, one on either side, and we can measure across. This is going to be the exact length of our horizontal pieces or our rails for our face frame. You can cut your face frame pieces at the miter saw, but I like to use the table saw and an Incra miter 5000 sled. The miter 5000 is very accurate and includes a flip-up stop system that makes it very easy to get repeat cuts and know that all my pieces will be exactly the right length when I go to assemble the frames. Now that I have all my face frame pieces cut to length and test fitted, you can see I tested my bottom rail in between my setup blocks, so I know it's a perfect length. I'm ready to assemble my face frame and attach it to the cabinet. To do this, I'm simply using more pocket screws. I'm using the Armor dog hole clamps and fences to help me secure and square my face frame pieces while I assemble them and drive the pocket screws. Now that I have my outer face frame assembled, I need to add the rail that will create the opening for the drawers. I first cut a couple of spacer blocks. These are the correct length at 4 inches, and they'll help me locate that drawer rail. Then I can drop it into place, make sure everything's nice and tight, clamp it down, and I'm ready to install my screws. The spacer blocks I use to locate the rail for the drawer box opening is also the perfect size to be the drawer divider. I added a few pocket hole screws in it, and I made a spacer block out of some scrap plywood to locate it and keep it nice and centered in my face frame. Now I'm simply going to drive those screws home. To attach my face frames to my cabinet box, I'm going to use pocket screws. Kreg offers many different options that allow us to attach the Kreg jig to a larger workpiece like an assembled cabinet. So even if we forget before assembly to add the screw holes, we can easily add them in. With my face frame assembled, I've got it clamped up to the cabinet box and positioned exactly where I need it. Now I'm going to use the pocket holes that I drilled earlier and some pocket screws to attach the frame to the cabinet box. Before I install the face frame on my upper cabinet, I need to drill my shelf pin hole. To do this, I'm using a Kreg shelf pin jig. It has a fence that I can use to locate against the front of the cabinet to drill my holes for the front pins, and I can remove the fence, flip the jig over, slide it in against the back of the cabinet, and drill my pinholes in the back. With my face frame complete, my drawers and sliding trays are next to be made. I decided to use 3/4 inch plywood for the sides, front, and back of my sliding trays, and 1/2 inch plywood for the tray bottom. I used an infinity quarter kerf flat top blade to make a 1/4 inch groove for the tray bottom to fit into. Because I'm using plywood for my sliding trays and drawer boxes, I decided to use box joint joinery. To make these joints, I'm at the table saw using a box joint jig and an infinity quarter kerf flat top blade. If you decide to use solid wood for your drawer boxes, you may want to use dovetail joinery and use a jig like the Lee RTJ400 at your router table to get quick and easy dovetail joints. I also used the flat top blade at the table saw with a sacrificial fence in order to make a rabbet around the edge of each of the tray bottoms so that they would fit into the 1/4 inch groove. This makes the drawer bottom flush with the bottom of the sliding tray. Because my drawer boxes are half the size of my sliding trays and will hold significantly less weight, I decided to make them out of 1/2 inch plywood for the sides, front, and back, and 1/4 inch plywood for the bottom. Again, I used a 1/4 inch flat top blade at the table saw to make the groove for my bottom to fit into, and I used the same box joint jig to make the joinery for the corners. I like to dry fit the pieces of my trays together to confirm that everything is fitting up properly. Then I can apply glue and clamp everything up using parallel jaw style clamps. Once clamped, I like to measure diagonally from corner to corner to confirm that everything's nice and square. Be sure to subscribe for part 3, where we show you how to build the raised panel doors and drawer fronts for our cabinets.